You can prove anything with facts. You've heard that before, right? Maybe just after you've given a detailed analysis of someone's faulty reasoning, pointed out some logical fallacies, gone into a bit more detail than was really necessary on Avogadro's number. It's like they engineered the perfect phrase to annoy skeptics. In one pithy assertion, they undo the very concept of proof, and with a shrug, suggest they're somehow above or beyond our world of tawdry facts. The first few times it frustrated me, then that frustration turned to despair. This is not a new feeling for me. I've always been a socially awkward person. The essential tragedy of trying to communicate with other meat robots, people, is never far from my mind. Getting better at communication is hard work. It means admitting our inadequacies, potentially embarrassing ourselves, and, perhaps worst of all, practicing talking to people. So I get it if some of you choose not to try. If you're a skeptic, though, I don't think you can give up that easy. So if you're with me, let's get into it, into the jungle of the mind. Our primate ancestors could communicate everything they needed to before they developed language. Making noises and pointing or poking each other served to communicate simple information like food, predator, or sex. Many of us still use these time-honoured forms of communication. So if language wasn't primarily for information transfer, then what was it for? The theory advanced by social psychologists is that language evolved as an extension of social grooming. Primates groom each other way more than they need to. That's because grooming is serving another function, to cement and develop social bonds. A monkey who doesn't like getting his fur tidied up might think other monkeys are stupid for spending so much time on a boring and pointless activity. If you've ever complained about the banality of small talk, you are that lonely monkey. Small talk is human social grooming. It only seems dumb if you think the point is to exchange information about the weather multiple times a day. It isn't. The signalling theory of human behaviour explains so much of our day-to-day interactions. The theory is simple. When it comes to human behaviour, things are not what they seem. People always have two reasons to do anything: a good reason and the real reason. For example, when my friend gives me another vial of rescue remedy because I'm anxious about an upcoming talk, does she really think diluted flower essences will reduce my stress levels? Or is she just signalling that she cares about me enough to go to Boots and spend £7.50 on a vial of brandy and water? Probably a bit of both, but if I assume it's only the former, I'll be confused and frustrated when she doesn't stop giving me the damn things, even after I've explained why they don't work. With diagrams. I have another friend, not to brag, who complains that movies come with subtitles, but no subtext titles. He's often surprised when a character on screen goes in for a kiss or swings a punch because he didn't notice the subtextual clues leading up to those events. Realising that a lot of human behaviour is about signalling is like switching the subtext titles on. Richard Clarke studies vaccine hesitancy, the reasons why people are leery of getting their kids vaccinated. Of course, it's partly about scientific illiteracy, but he's found the subtext of these people's concerns. It's about trust. They don't trust the government or Big Pharma or science. Once he realised that the problem wasn't just lack of information, he changed his tactics as an advocate. If you have a sceptical speciality, whether it's UFOs, quack cancer cures or climate change denial, knowing the science is important, but it might be much less important than understanding the unconscious motivations that lie beneath people's professed beliefs. When you eventually make your way through someone's jungle of subtext, you find yourself standing at the foot of their tower of beliefs. And of course, it's tempting to immediately start examining it, looking for the loose blocks, maybe giving one a surreptitious prod. That's allowed. I checked the rules. We all know about the cognitive biases people use to prop their towers up. Each block is cemented in with concrete that, depending on the person, might be 1 part logic and 2 parts confirmation bias. Man is a credulous animal. No belief stays put purely based on reason and evidence, even in the most sceptical head. You've heard that saying, you can't reason someone out something they weren't reasoned into. That's true, but it's not an excuse to give up. People don't like having their minds changed. No one likes you reaching in there and poking at their blocks uninvited. If you go in grabbing at loose blocks, they might slap your hand away and cement their beliefs in even more firmly than before. Or you might grab the wrong one. The whole tower could collapse, leaving the person you were trying to help much worse off. They might even rebuild with new beliefs based on equally flimsy foundations. But people can and do change their own minds. So instead of trying to reason with them, we should help them reason themselves out of their unreasonable beliefs. You do that by talking about the tower instead of individual blocks. You ask them questions about how they reach their beliefs and why they continue to endorse them. Philosophers call this epistemology, which basically means how we know what we know. Street epistemologists are developing a way to talk to people not about what they believe, but about why they believe. SE, as all the cool kids are calling it, helps people deconstruct their own towers. But SE only works if the person asking the questions is open to changing their own beliefs. We can't get all up in other people's heads, interrogating them about their beliefs, unless we're willing to take a look at our own and acknowledge that some of our blocks, maybe even some of the load-bearing ones, might not be entirely reasonable. When you're talking to people about beliefs, it's vital to be honest. It's hard to gain respect and trust from other people if you're hiding what you really think or feel. Humans lie or misrepresent or dissemble to make people believe things that aren't true. And that's pretty much the exact opposite of our mission as skeptics. Honesty must be the skeptic's prime directive. That doesn't mean blurting out every mean or bizarre thought that pops into your head. It just means trying to make sure that everything you say is true and useful. If you use the true and useful heuristic to govern what you say, you'll find it works as a sickle to swipe through the jungle of subtext. If you're not sure what someone means, if you feel like you're missing the subtext, it's true and useful to say, "I don't understand. What do you mean by that, Dr. Peterson?" Everybody lies, all the time, to ourselves and others. The most common way we lie is by concealing our motivations. I admit, when I bring up Avogadro's number, it's not just to change someone's mind about the efficacy of homeopathy. It's also to impress and surprise people who, rightly, assume I know nothing about maths. Honesty allows us to connect with other people by letting them know who we really are. It also allows us a chance to get to know ourselves better. If you're committed to telling the truth, then when someone asks you a tricky question like, "Why are you a skeptic?" you have to do the hard work of reading your own subtext instead of reeling off a trite answer that doesn't capture the whole truth. When we're honest about what we believe, we're able to correct and improve those beliefs. Ideally, we should be tending to our own towers, checking the epistemological foundations regularly and removing our own loose blocks. We can only do that if we know what's going on up there, and the only way to do that is by using the reflective sickle of honesty. We live in an uncertain world. We all know that science starts with an admission of ignorance and arrives at provisional conclusions based on probabilistic models. As skeptics, it would be ridiculously ironic for us to deny the fact that we often don't know and aren't sure. If you're not going to go along with what everyone else thinks, if you're going to prioritise truth over convention, if you want to be an outlaw, you've got to be honest. I told you it wasn't easy. That's why we don't do it. We've spent a lot of time figuring out how to read scientific papers. We've memorised a long list of logical fallacies. We've read a couple of incredibly boring books on formal logic. Isn't that enough? If we want to be right, maybe it is. But if you're a skeptic, you don't just want to be right. Skeptics know that people make choices based on their beliefs, and if those beliefs are mistaken, their choices can get them in serious trouble. Skeptics don't just care about being right. We care about other people. That's what makes all this hard work worth it. You won't win them all. Some people won't change their minds. Some kinds of irrationality will not be defeated in our lifetimes. But imagine how much you'd regret it if you didn't live in accordance with your values, if you just sat at home being smug and right on the internet instead of doing what you can to make the world a more reasonable place. We need to get good at reading subtext, interrogating epistemology, and we need to prioritise honesty. It's difficult, but if you're a skeptic, if you care about the truth and other people, you've got to try.